have you here. I saw you, I don't know, maybe it was an X post or a YouTube video. And I said, I really like her. She's bold. She she explains herself so well. And her thinking, you're a journalist.
Yes.
In Norway, but your accent is so minor. Were you born in Norway or do you just...
Yeah.
Wow.
I just
Your English is...
And I have, I had a boyfriend in Texas for a while. And
there you go.
I have friends, travel back and forth. And so I do speak English every day. So that's why.
That's why. Well, you do beautifully.
Well, thank you very.
So I thought that I would like to talk to you first about Norway. I think Americans, there's certain countries, like the UK, we get the UK, we understand it. I mean, we think they're nuts, but that what has happened there, but we understand, I think because we can read so much more because it's all in English, of course. And so naturally there's more familiarity. Same thing with Australia, that kind of thing. Tell me a little bit about Norway. How does the government work? And then I want to go into the people because my final question is going to be, do Norwegians want Norway to become a Muslim majority country? That's kind of the question I want to end up on with our background on Norway, and then we're going to go from there elsewhere.
Yeah, it's an interesting question.
So go ahead, tell me about Norway.
So yeah, Norway is a very interesting little country, I think, because we're only 5.5 million people altogether in our entire country. But about 1 million of those are immigrants. So that be immigrants from Europe or outside of Europe or the Middle East. So that can vary. That can be Western immigrants or Middle Eastern immigrants, mostly Middle Eastern and East European. So we're not a big country, but we have a lot of money. So we have a booming oil industry and gas industry, right? We have a lot of great natural resources.
What form of government do you have?
So we have parliamentarism.
Mm-hmm.
So
you have a PM. Do you have a president as well?
No, we have a king.
Okay.
We're a royal family. They don't really do anything though. Mm-hmm. They're more like mascots to our country. Mm-hmm. But I need to remind you, and what I was about to say is that most of our politicians have some sort of position in the UN or the World Economic Forum or Bilderberg Group or any of these overnational big organizations. Globalists.
Yes.
Including our royal family. So they're a part of that as well, even though they don't have any power per se. They're still involved in it. So,
well, didn't Keir Starmer of the UK say that if he was asked between his favorite thing, like Parliament, something British, excuse me, I'm going to muddle this up, and the World Economic Forum, and he chose the World Economic Forum. And I think of him as like a little pipsqueak who's a poser, who wants to be somebody. And that's what it sounds like Norwegian parliamentarians or, ministers are in the business of doing as well.
Exactly the same thing. So when I look at Keir Starmer, I say our prime minister is his evil twin.
What's your prime minister's name? Can I pronounce it?
Jonas.
Jonas?
Like Jonas. Gahr Støre. Yes, correct. That is our prime minister.
Gahr Støre.
He's so vastly unpopular that he had to bring back Jens Stoltenberg earlier this year. When he left chief of NATO, he came back to parliament as the minister of finance to save the government because they were breaking up over over EU climate policy, basically. One of the parties left.
So I'm assuming you guys are all in with climate and, okay, just as a matter of disclosure, I'm with Trump. I've been a long believer that climate science is a hoax.
Bullshit.
Okay, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
2 words better. And that it's just like any other societal upheaval resulting in government taking more control, more money, more control of the economy, things becoming more nationalized, more employees having to work to achieve this great end, whether it's, the great society, whether it's feminism, where it's gone to wokeism and all that, or climate change and migration. All of these things always seem to be create the crisis. Now the government will step in and solve it all. And they do such a good job. They do such a good job.
It's funny, is it not, how they are the creators of the problems, but they will also be your savior.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all have that in common in the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not so much you guys anymore. In the United States, like you said, you have Trump. You have an amazing administration doing their best to put America first. I think it's looking from it from a European perspective, and especially Scandinavian perspective, because Norway is not a member of the EU. I need to remind everybody of this, because we're not a member. We have the EEA agreement. We're very much a colony of the EU. Our the policies are not really made in Norway anymore. They're made in Brussels, but we have nothing we had to say about it. We have a veto that we never use in terms of directives that come from Brussels and enter our laws and our policies, our policy making. So we're in the position where I think we had an anniversary. I can't remember how many years it was. We had an anniversary this year when Sweden and Norway, the union was abolished. We had a war, of course, to gain independence, just to be captured in another union telling us what to do, where the people have nothing to say anymore. And so this is where we come from. Half of the country is asleep, not really realizing that we don't have any independence anymore. That
no sovereignty.
Yeah, exactly. So looking to the U.S., and we have this propaganda media here in Norway as well. I think sometimes even worse than the United States media. I'm not going to lie. That's how I interpret it. Like being in Texas, coming back and forth, having a lot of American friends, in fact, and talking to them about the American mainstream media. And then I look at from my own country, and I'm like, we're worse. I don't know how many times different newspapers here have called Donald Trump Hitler, but it's getting around to quite a bit. I'll send you a picture so you can get it up on the screen. They painted, well, they didn't paint, they took a picture of Donald Trump, they gave him a Hitler mustache, and they smacked it on the front page of the newspaper. This was a few years ago. But it just speaks to how willing they are to spin the narrative. And even where American mainstream media apologizes for Russiagate, or where where conspiracies have been,
like we have to find people on both sides, where he supposedly affirmed the KKK or white nationalists.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And he never said that. I mean, he never said that in context. He said, except for, of course, these guys. And so occasionally the press will apologize. But let's focus on this. So you have a mini United States. You're just like, in some sense, you have a lot of common with all of these states in Europe. Nothing in common, it sounds like, with Poland. These states are just like closing. borders and very strong, saying our culture will prevail. But as far as the compromisers, those who sacrifice their sovereignty, who do not love their culture enough to defend it, nurture it, and make sure it prevails. And also the fact that the people's wishes do not matter to the people in charge, those who are the bureaucracy and the elected officials. I think I understand how it worked in Britain, but because the Tories lied and said we're going to get migration down to this infinitesimal number or percentage compared to what it was before. And then they just lied and they kept saying, well, soon. Now they're out. And now we've got Labor that are doing the same thing. But they're not as rebellious as Americans.
No.
We're individualist, which creates this perception more of rebellion, but in a way, it's just personal autonomy, individualism. We also have the luxury of a federalist state. So we're really a federation and confederation even of independent sovereign states, though our states sacrifice that. But boy, they're starting to claw back all of the rights of each individual sovereign state. So we have a mix that helps us. It's in our DNA to be individualists. But y'all, I don't know. It makes me sad. Do Norwegians like being Norwegian? Do they like Norway? Do you say, oh, remember when so-and-so, whose name I can't pronounce, wrote this great epic poem or the battle of this or that? Do you have these heartwarming stories and songs and rituals? Or is it like, that's all that Christian history and no. What do you think?
We do. And I think, they're perished by a lot of people, but at the same time not, because it's always about our new culture, our new country. I think personally, my opinion is that, there's something with us. We don't have that type of DNA that Americans had. Even the Irish, you look to Ireland and you see how they are protecting their women and
I love
they're
it.
opposing the mass migration going on in Ireland. They're fierce, okay? I don't know what happened to the Viking gene, but he died somewhere along the way. We were in a union with Denmark. We were in a union with Sweden. We freed ourselves from Sweden. And yet here again, we end up in a union. It's like we're not made to govern ourselves. I'm sorry to say that's how I view it. Unfortunately, because people just tend to follow whatever goes on. We see this in culture, especially with rituals and the government never has money to take care of our historic Viking churches. That has become a huge problem. We had the same debate in terms of our Viking ships. Now they are building a new museum after a lot back and forth. There's never money for taking care of our culture. We're taught not to
value it,
cherish our culture because we're a multicultural society, right?
But that's a cult.
So, yeah.
That's a religious cult or a form of religious cult.
I agree with you. But this is how it's become. And what you see with Norway has a history where I think if you bring Jesus or God into anything, you hear people, because it's just, we're so de-Christianized in this country. Sweden as well. Very much a human, what do you call it?
Humanist?
Humanist country, yes. Religion had no place all of a sudden. They were stripping religion out of every institution. Even the church isn't Christian anymore. You know what they did over Easter? They read from the Quran.
Shut up.
No, I am not joking. It was a church where they were reading from the Quran. They had a demonstration for Palestine on Good Friday.
Do they do the baby Jesus in a keffiyeh garbage?
No, no. And we decorated for Eid.
You're kidding.
No, they didn't decorate for Easter. Our culture and our if I go out there and I say I believe in Jesus Christ, Jesus is my Lord and Savior, they look at me like I escaped the loony bin. But if I tell you that I believe that the prophet was traveling on a space donkey, all of a sudden I'm exotic and exciting. I don't know what it is, but there's
Have they read the Quran?
Do
they know the Quran, what it says?
No. They can't. If they did, they would not have that attitude.
It's I don't know how many Americans feel like I do, but I have an affection toward Europe, your brethren. Every country, of course, is very unique, or it used to be. They don't want you to have that. But I have just an affection because you're our brethren in the West, and your culture was founded similarly, not many, many differences, but upon the foundation of the scriptures of biblical truth. That's how our government was set up from the book of Deuteronomy. And individual liberty and freedom of speech and a robust press. And you could go on and on. The rule of law, obviously, is massively important. You can continue. There's so many lovely, beautiful, worthy principles upon which our nations were originally founded or evolved into. And now when I look over the pond, and I think, it breaks my heart. It really does. It breaks my heart.
It breaks my heart as well, where we're in a space and a place and a time in history where so many Europeans have been convinced that multicultural or a diversity means mass immigration from the Middle East. I mean, we have never been more alike, country to country in Europe, than we are now. Because we're
you lack diversity.
Yes, because everything's the same. Everything looks like the Middle East. We have the same crime, same type of crime, the same rape gangs. It is turning in to be the same. I'm not going to say the word, but Trump said it beautifully some years ago. Starts with an S and ends with a hole.
I remember that speaking.
And we're all turning into that same S-hole. And I think it's that Europe was the most diverse continent on Earth. Yes, we were based on the same.
There's two truths about that just have been hitting me. I've always thought about how strange it was when the European Union, which began just as it always begins with, no, we're just ... We're just going to be, free trade. It's going to be some economic. We're going to be able to be strong in our negotiations and some defense. Yeah, of course, we need defense, NATO. And then the next thing you know, Angela Merkel is making everybody take in waves of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Muslim migrants who have to go through like 20 countries before they get to many of them. And it's an oppressive, authoritarian nightmare. But what I've never understood, because I've been to Europe, I've been to, well, of course, England and Scotland, but first France and Italy, and just the beauty of, and then of course you can see the pictures and so many videos, and especially, in these last 20, 30 years with the internet, the beauty and uniqueness and the quaint, beautiful villages and the grand buildings and monuments, the fabulous inspiring churches. There is so much that each one of these little cultures is just, it's like, it's an explosion of beauty and interesting history and much to be admired. And then the idea is, let's all be the same. But when you're saying it is now, the ultimate end was, let's all be the same S-hole.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's all import the third world.
Yeah, because that is what we've all done. We've all imported the third world. You see, the paths of history that you step upon when you go to Europe, when you go to Rome, or you go to Paris, the common myths of the local communities, the rich history of food and tradition, family that you can find, which are very different from Italy to Poland.
Yes.
Yet at the same time built upon, like you said, the scripture. There's two things that are fundamental values that we all have in common, right? That is the Christian value of free will, right? That is number one. And it's also the sanctity of the individual. That is something in our Western culture that comes from Christianity that they don't have in the Middle East or in Africa or other places. Yet that is what they seek to destroy, is how I see it.
Oh, no, you're right, because it's spoken of every single day in the UK. Because I can understand what they're saying because it's English, and then there's so many subtitles on many other videos that I'm able to see more. Germany, Italy, France. But in our Declaration of Independence, it declares that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. And what I was looking at the other day as I examined it, because I wanted to see what is the very most basic thing that other religions, and I include this in mass Hindu immigration, cannot honestly agree with. And that is that all men are created equal and are endowed with certain unalienable rights. Because with Hinduism, the majority of the entire population, the vast majority are the lowest of the four major castes, and then the untouchables. And so you can't say that all men are created equal under that paradigm. And they're not, and they believe very much in the superiority of one caste over the other. So everyone's either looking up at somebody in submission or down in submission, right? But then in Islam, women aren't created equal. And the infidel, which I proudly say I am a kafir, they can't say that. So our most foundational document, which is like our mission statement, neither one of those religions, and then I would say Marxism, I mean, you go through it, all men are created equal. That is not. But that's Genesis 1, 26, 27, 28.
Yeah, and that doesn't apply anymore, right? We have, like England, like the UK, the two-tier police, the two-tier justice system. It's very interesting to watch because you don't really have to go through the actual convictions to see this happen. We had a case in the west of Norway, in one of our larger cities, Bergen. I think this was last summer. Arrest me if it's not, but last summer or a year and a half ago or something like that. A football player, he was from the Middle East, or background from the Middle East. I'm sorry, the cat is really on it right now. He claimed he was walking through the park in the middle of the night, and somehow 4 white Nazis were waiting in a bush for him to pass, and then brutally beat him and said racial slurs to him. the entire city was on it. This is a racism-free city. They politically went in the city council and said this is a racism-free zone. We declare this a racism-free zone.
It's almost religious.
It's religious.
Yeah.
And then a lot of money was collected for this person. It was a big deal. It was a nationwide deal in the media. Turns out, because I was sitting there and I was thinking, I've never heard of 4 white Norwegian people having the time to hang around inside a bush in a park at 4 a.m. in the morning waiting for, a dark person. Pat, it's not something that's very normal to do in this country. Maybe there are some psychos out there. I'm not going to deny that maybe there are, but I've never heard of it. In fact, we lack so many Nazis in this country that the media claim that we have, that if there is such a thing as a Nazi march, we actually have to bust them in from Sweden. That's how little Nazis we have here in Norway. Anyway, turns out he was riding one of those electric scooters. His phone showed, and he had an accident. So now he's being investigated by the police for a false report. Yet no money has been returned. No media has apologized. This is how they treat this as truth from
the beginning.
From the beginning, always. As to where, if a Norwegian person is assaulted, there's always skepticism. They don't believe you. Lots of research has to be done. And they hide these types of crimes. We had a big one last spring where an older gentleman, he was walking his dog. It's a small village, about half an hour, I think, or an hour outside of Oslo, our capital. He was on his way to his grocery store, his local store. There's a group of migrants, youth migrants, that had been terrorizing the area for quite some time, both with drugs and violence and etc. They were making a fuss outside the store, and he told them to calm down and act like people.
Civilized human beings.
Yeah, civilized human being. It was videoed. They knocked him out. This older man with a tiny, tiny little dog. There's a video of that, of course. So if you want to have, you can watch it.
Wait a minute. Is he like this little man walking with this tiny dog? Did they kill the dog?
Yeah. They did not kill the dog.
Okay,
no.
This is a different guy who they went over and then they just killed the dog. And this little old man's walking down the road. And go ahead, tell me the rest of your dismal.
Yeah, anyway, the police didn't really want to investigate this. So it was pressure from the media to investigate.
It's like the UK. Grooming gangs. Just, wait 20, 30 years. Wait till the problem is beyond solving.
But it's already beyond that. These youngsters, these gangsters, I would say men, because they're 16 plus. Look,
if you can rape a woman, get her pregnant, and beat somebody to death or whatever, you're a man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, they have been terrorizing the community for a long time. They wanted to do a protest march in this village against violence, right? They were stopped by Antifa and immigrants saying that there shall be no such march. It's racist. So a march against violence is now in Norway deemed racist. This was the left-wing media was on it, was super racist. They couldn't have this, yada, yada, yada.
Let me ask you this. I picture Europe, like I see the videos, sort of like I see Iran prior to the 1979 revolution. And, we all in America went through every day of the embassy hostage taking, 444 days. And prior to that, women and girls, they looked like they were walking down the street of an American city or little town. And when you go and look at those lovely little clips that are put up by accounts on X of England from the 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s, and your heart just skips a beat because you think that never had to go away. It was engineered. And in England, they used to have a high trust society like in America. You could leave your keys in the car, your front door open, your windows open at night. Your kids could play all day long. You just say, go outside. They'd play. They'd come up. Moms would leave their baby carriage while they went on the sidewalk while they would pop in to grab something and know that their baby would be there when they got back. This is how I would picture Norway, Sweden, Finland, Denmark. Am I right?
Yes. And to a degree, depending on where you are, it's still like that. You know? We
Civil
still
society.
Yeah.
High trust.
High trust. I think that is kind of our root problem as well. Because the high trust society is very much still present. And I don't mean that in terms of like necessarily the faith in government being present as it used to be. But we're so indoctrinated from an early age in our social democratic values that our institutions have our best interests at heart. And it's so rooted in people here. It is like looking back, if you look to COVID, for instance, there was no mandates here. All they needed was social pressure. And I think that says a lot of the mentality between people.
Yeah. Well, but also don't you think that there's, in addition to that delusional belief, I don't think you could ever, even in a high trust society where high trust equates to very, very little crime. Crime is more the passions within a household, a family. I was talking to my mother the other day. She's 90. She lives with me. She's been living with me for like 30 years. And I said, Mom, think about it. When you hear of someone being murdered, killed, and if it's in a family, you think really sad. But if you explore it, you know, here's a man jealous of his wife. Here's a son that didn't get his inheritance. Here's a passion of somebody drunk and doing something insane in their family, whatever, two families have it. That is something about the passion and sin of an individual. When you have strangers, when you have a Norwegian, an American, a Brit going out and killing on the street, not for money even, I mean, that's obviously horrendous, but just to kill. That is a breakdown in society that killing your wife or your next door neighbor is not as bad in the sense of what it's indicating about your whole society. And so high trust is low crime, no crime.
Yet somehow high trust is still very present in Norway and crime is rising. We're starting to have the same problems as Sweden. I don't know. Still people get very shocked when I tell them how bad Sweden is, because Sweden is so bad. There's explosions every single week, if not every other day, depending on which year you look at, right? There's shootings. Shootings are so normal that they're not even really reported on unless it's something in particular, unless somebody throws a bomb into a grocery store at 4 p.m. in the afternoon, which that happens. And, you know, there's always this thing from the government when they speak on this saying, you know, it's an isolated incident.
Those two words should never be allowed. We need to have censorship. Isolated incident needs to be on top of that.
I agree with you. But they're normalizing this, right?
Yeah.
Well, you know, they just were at the wrong place at the wrong time is also something that we hear a lot, right? So you have this gang wars going on. Yet earlier this year, I think it was early February, where Sweden's prime minister, he went out and he said, we have lost control of the gangs. We have no control, which is an admission to truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a position any politician should ever be in. So they haven't done anything to take that control because they've been, pretending that society is fine because they don't want people to know what's going on.
Well, if you have to admit that your theology, the cult of multiculturalism that you have expounded upon, you've given the speeches and to the rousing ovations, and look, I think of it sort of as a narcissism that all of these people who believe that we'll just bring in this Somali, who's raped women, who hates Christianity, wants to destroy the West, has lived a life of crime. All he has to do is be exposed to how our loving, huggy, warm and fuzzy culture, and they will just dramatically overnight transform. Right. Aren't we special? We Norwegians and Brits and Americans, we can just change. We can change people better than God can. I mean, we can give them a born-again experience.
It's amazing, isn't it? I think in Sweden is like you're Swedish and you just magically have Swedish values the second you ride the subway for the first time. I'm not sure what it is in Norway. There's a joke internally in Sweden, by the way. I don't know what I would say the Norwegian equivalent to that is, but I do know that we hide numbers. So what really got me into journalism, I've always been an outspoken person. I always said what's on my mind. Never really gave it too much thought if that was accepted or not. That's not been my main concern, right? But what really got me worried was when I, as a woman in my own country, felt that my freedom was taken from me and I couldn't move the way I used to move. So in terms of attack rapes, there was an epidemic going on in Norway every single spring and summer where women were being attacked and raped in parks and at street corners.
Can you carry guns?
No, we can't even. We're not allowed to carry pepper spray. We are not allowed to defend ourselves at all.
That's a crime on the part of your legislators. Why can't you carry pepper spray?
Because you might spray somebody that doesn't deserve it. So, and they cannot prevent the crime from happening either. So, if you're just at the wrong place at the wrong time and you're just unlucky to be raped, we might be able to give that person some sort of punishment, maybe, let's say, pick garbage for 3 weeks, maybe.
Do they not see what Christianity also brought to Western culture? Of course, it starts in Israel, and it went all the way to Babylon and Persia, and but it brought all men are created equal. But that included women. Mankind is also is male and female. That's a different subject. We won't even go into wokeism because that's not my main concern. Other people are handling that and transgender. But the dignity of womanhood, the respect for women's understanding, intellect. I'm not a feminist, I'm older than you, but I grew up in this whole era of, feminism. And at one point I thought I was, because I didn't realize that it really had a mask and it was really very Marxist and radical underneath. I thought when I was young that this was just about equal rights. And when I realized what it was really about, no. So I'm not a feminist, but I'm not sure what the word or the label you can use because I never use it. But I believe in the dignity and the quality of women. And y'all are importing in the name of benevolence and your overwhelmingly gracious society. You're importing misogyny for real, not the fake stuff that we get here in America, and really Nazism in this form of Islam's foundational hatred of Christianity and Judaism, Judeo-Christianity. Why are you importing Nazis?
Question. I mean, feminists are defending them. They want more of this for some absurd reason. It's quite interesting. Why are we doing that is the great question. There's speculation as why this is going on, what sort of agreements have been put on the table. All I can tell you is that I know that the first Pakistanis came to Norway in the middle of the 60s. I know that
to work in the oil.
This was before we found oil.
Oh.
So it had really nothing to do with oil. Also, Germany was a key provider of Pakistani immigrants to the rest of Europe in the 60s. So they traveled through Germany. There was what we today would call a trafficker that made sure that these Pakistanis came all the way here. So if you look into and by the way, if you talk about that in the Norwegian public, there's this misconception, a lie, as I would call it, about Pakistanis in Norway. They came in the 70s, they came as workers, they built the nation, blah, 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 blah. They did not. They came
built
before
the nation. You're hearing that garbage too?
Oh, yeah, it's same recipe as you. And we adapt a lot of. Actually, I sat on the bus today, and I thought I looked at this poster, and it said in Norwegian something, the F word. And I was with my mother when we were going into town, and she looked at me and she said, "What's the F word?" And I said, "No, I don't know. I can think of 5 F words that are maybe not nice, but they're trying to adapt the N word from the United States. That is what they're doing. And the same way we adapted the BLM protest. Why?
Wait a minute. The word that only a certain population could say it 47 times a day, even on TV and on, obviously YouTube and everything else. But if I said it, which I have no desire to, but I mean, if I said it, I would be, I don't know, lynched or something, at least electronically. Now, they're actually bringing that word into your culture.
They're bringing the culture around the language to Europe, I would say. It's more correct to say. We see it in Norway. We see it adapt in different ways in different places. But you must understand that the influence of the United States and Europe is big. Okay, so in terms of Democrats and these ideologies and even just looking at the BLM protests, we had BLM protests in Norway. We have no reason to have BLM protests. And they're
other than the Somalis, do you have, America has a unique Black culture. Within our culture, Blackness, to be a Black American, is a very different thing than a Somali showing up in 21st century Norway. Firstly, it's so far off because Black America is red, white, and blue, apple pie, USA, football, grandma cooking in, the kitchen. What we're doing is, and then I want to go back to your story, we are importing other races, ethnicities, cultures that are suppressing our Black minority, which used to be number 2 in America. So it was whites, Blacks, and then very little of anybody else. But in the 70s, after the 65 Immigration Act, Now Hispanics are double Blacks, and numbers is political power. And I say to these Black leaders, do you ever think about the fact that now pretty soon Islam and Indian will supplant you, and this historic population that goes back 400 or 500 years in America is going to be a nothing burger in terms we have imported the demise of the power of the Black culture. So sorry. So the Somalis, whatever, what were you talking about when I interrupt you about? Oh, you're importing the N-word culture. What does that mean?
I mean, it means that we're importing the anti-white, the anti-nation, the anti-Christianity narrative. We're adapting the language, we're adapting the ideology, and with it, the falsifying of history into Europe. That is what we're adapting. And it's very interesting to watch, because seeing your reaction laughing about, the Somali that came last year and all of a sudden acts like he is a, African American. It is very interesting to watch. And it's like, Norway was never colonizing anybody. We're not a colonizer. In the best way, we kidnapped all the hot people from the UK and took them back to Norway. I mean, that's what we did. We didn't colonize anybody.
And your Vikings, I now hear, are found to be Muslims. The Vikings are Muslims. That was quite a shock to me.
The UK actually are teaching in schools now that the Vikings were Muslim. Or is it Sweden?
No, well, maybe it's Sweden. I could look it up. But the head of culture, the person who is in charge, who is supposed to facilitate the dissemination of the understanding of culture and history, I thought it was Norway, maybe it's Sweden. This man is an immigrant Muslim. He's in charge of teaching for this nation the culture of Norway or Sweden. I'll look it up.
I think it's Sweden.
Yeah, it's Sweden. Okay.
Yeah.
So what he was explaining is the Vikings were Muslims.
They could have been Muslims.
They were Muslims were kidnapping.
But they traded, down in the Middle East, and they were also taken as slaves in the Middle East, and that's how Vikings could be Muslims. Apparently, that is now a thing. So you're falsifying history, and this has been going on for a long time. I know we had. So you asked me about a culture earlier on, and of course, there's so much I could say, but my mind goes everywhere. We have the Ibsen, which is, he wrote, I'm trying to find the title in my head in English, but it's really hard. But he wrote about, a doll's home. I don't know if that's a correct translation into English. About divorce, right? Dr. Stockman, who was warning everybody about the toxic water, but nobody wanted to believe them. He wrote about these plays that he wrote way back when are so well written that they apply to any Western civilization today in terms of politics and the way people react, and especially in Scandinavia. He did write all of this in Italy, but he was Norwegian. So he is an historic figure in our culture, which we all, if you're Norwegian and you don't know your Henrik Ibsen, then
what's wrong with you?
Yeah, there's something
leave the
wrong
party. Leave the parties.
And yes, so we have that, and we have tradition. We have old traditions. We have the St. Olive's Fest as well, which are now being run by Muslims every year. I don't know why that happened. They claim it's not a Christian festival, but it's very much a Christian festival. It's also about, the Viking Christian king. They don't want to admit that, and they're trying to change it. we have Scandinavian writers. So this is where it gets interesting in terms of art and book. Looking at Edvard Munch, for instance, they wanted to change names of his paintings because the names of the paintings were racist.
Offensive.
They didn't want to put up, pictures in the National Gallery of certain things because they wanted to hide that part of history, and they claimed it was racist. And then you have Pippi Longstocking, which is a famous Swedish character, right?
I love Pippi Longstocking.
Right, she was my idol.
She's so adorable.
Yeah, and her father was the king of Negroes, right? That's what is written in the books. And then a story that is based on a true story about the Swede. I don't remember his name right now, but a Swede that he sailed, his ship wrecked outside of Papua New Guinea. He came into the tribe. He married the princess of the tribe, became king of the tribe, and he actually earned them a lot of money. This is the character that this father of Pippi Longstocking is based on. But they had to go in and change it because he could not be the king of Negroes. He had to be the king of the Seven Oceans. They take away history. They take away characters.
I'm just reading. I was trying to find that guy that's wherever he is, Sweden, critiqued. This is several years ago. Sweden's black minister for culture ordered Viking artifacts to be melted down and recycled. Now this is years old. It's 2018. But since her, because I do know that this other it's on an account called Into the Memory Hole, so that's very, very appropriate. Okay. Let me ask you a question.
Yes.
If you took a poll in Norway and said, would you like Norway to become a majority Muslim, and then maybe you'd ask, like, would you like to live under Sharia law? Like, give them, like, would you like this? Would you like this? And then just kind of explore it. Would you like, do you have plural marriage or polygamy in Sweden now? Because you probably do in, behind closed door. But do you think Norwegians are they atheists, most Norwegians now?
Yeah, but Christianity is rising again, which is nice. I actually went to church on Sunday, and I had never been to this church before. It's a happy, clappy, happy Christian church, very much adapted from the American free church, I think. I have never seen so many young people in church. I didn't spot an old person.
Really?
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
It's wonderful. And
so we know that there's some people that would prefer to still glorify the name of Jesus, Yeshua. How do you say Jesus in Norwegian?
Jesus.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yes.
And so there are some holdouts and maybe some newbies that are coming back to the faith, but you're going to be a majority Muslim if you don't stop what you're doing.
Oh, yes. If you look to Sweden, if you look to certain cities, over 50% is immigrants. We used to say we're about 15 years behind Sweden in terms of crime, in terms of population and all that. That gap is closing every single day. I would say 10 to 5 years behind. We still use a lot of the same excuses Swedish politicians used, 10, 15, 20 years ago, talking about, social economic reasons for crime, for instance. But I mean, if you ask me, social economic crime, that was never a problem with the Norwegian population. We didn't go out in gangs and, group rape 13-year-old girls and give them lots of alcohol and leave them on the ice to freeze to death back in the day. So I don't know what happened in terms of social economic conditions to make that a new thing. With that said, we're still hearing that in Norway. Sweden has turned around. So I usually say, Sweden is on their way up again, and people look at me like I'm mentally unstable. And I don't mean that in terms of society getting their stuff together. I mean that in the way that they're actually being earnest in their reporting about what's going on, in the reports that they make from government, the numbers, the crimes. They're not hiding it anymore.
So the censorship, the self-censorship and the censorship is I think that they know that they're in trouble and they got to get this out. And maybe they want the people to force them, in a sense, into making decisions that they are too cowardly to make without. They're not going to be a David defending Israel in the Bible. They need a pollster to tell them, okay, you've hit a threshold. Now you can do it and not lose, the vote or the popular sentiment. They're not going to do it in.
No, but I also think that when you have such scandals as Sweden has had, not only in terms of group rapes, because they've been absolutely horrific, I tell you, we're talking about 20 men gangbanging women in wheelchairs, okay? So that aside, talking about scandals, we have had several occasions systematically employees in working with the elderly, raping the elderly in their homes or in
nursing home.
Elderly nursing homes. And on top of that, you have the gang crime. Say gang, but it's really it's clans. Okay, these are Middle Eastern clans from Iran, from Afghanistan, from Iraq, different
Turkey,
countries. Yes.
Somalia.
They operate in Spain. They operate around Europe, but they operate a lot in Sweden. And you need to remember, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway, they are social democratic nations. Even though the EU doesn't want nations, that is a completely different. That's a whole program. We could talk about that. But that aside, we have a huge welfare system. The clans take advantage of the welfare system in terms of business to skim money off the state while they're raping old people. You can't look away from that. Giving your tax money to gangs to rape.
50% almost, literally, 2024, 50%, it's actually 483 out of 1,000, I'm going with 50%, of Somali men in Sweden, Norway are rapists or have committed, charged with violent crime. So that means almost 100% of them probably have actually committed, or 80.
We don't really get stats in Norway. There was a statistics that was ordered on the capital, Oslo, that showed horrific numbers for immigrants. It is so bad in terms of crime. But as I told you earlier, what woke me up was the attack rapes. I had to change the way I was living my life because I was scared of being raped while walking home from work.
You can't even carry a gun to even the odds.
Spray. I can't carry anything. I have to have hairspray and a lighter or a fork in my bag.
Oh, that's a great. I've never tried that. It's always in the movies. You make your blowtorch.
Well, you gotta think quickly, right?
Yes.
But this is the and they hide this from us, right? They hide the numbers. They don't want us to know. In Sweden, at least, they're starting. The honesty has started because they cannot hide it anymore. And with the open border, we know that the Swedish clans is a problem in Norway. They're in every single police district in all of Norway. There has been bombings here due to Swedish criminals. And I say that like this because we know they're immigrants or have an immigrant background.
Well, we know. I mean, I think in America, if what we would want to know is, are there any exceptions? Because I think most people who read and consume a lot of news, which Americans are pretty, they consume a lot of news. We know what the UK looks like. We know what Germany looks like. We know what France, we know what Sweden looks like. So we assume you're the same way. You don't have to even, at this point, like we don't have to be convinced. When we hear Poland giving a speech, we just say, okay, hold on. I got to lay down because I just, I'm so shocked by what's going on in Poland. My question again is, do Norwegians want to become a Muslim nation?
I think no. I would say no, but that requires people to understand what Islam is. The problem that we have, the fundamental problem we have with Islam is not necessarily the Muslims themselves. They're just being Muslims. Mm-hmm. They are doing what their ideology is telling them to do.
What the Quran says.
Yeah, right. So it is the politicians, it's the media, and the narrative that is spun around this, that Islam, this is what they do in Norway. This is why they read from the Quran in church. Because Allah and God, they're the same.
They think the Muslim God, Allah, is this, and I know Allah means God, but
they're reading it like it's the same God. And there was a lot of fuss around Nazism, as there always is when they want to suppress something. It's the same recipe
associated with Nazism, and then you're branded.
Yes, it's just so. This is why the EU is so interesting, right? Because the whole project of the European Union was to suppress the nation state. Because if you get rid of the nation state, you get rid of the threat of war. That is the foundation of the European Union, okay? And it's the same excuse that is used in Norway when you talk about anything that you want to suppress. You just call them Nazis. And then 7th of October happened, and they had a huge problem. All of a sudden, there's a surge in anti-Semitism. And where is it coming from? Not the far right, okay? It's coming from Islam.
That's
and it was already there, but now it's visible. And I think if you ask Norwegians if they want to live under Sharia law, they would say no if they understood what Sharia law was. I think a lot of people do, but I also think a lot of people are ignorant to the fact of what Islam is, of what Sharia law is, what it means to be Muslim. Because we can talk about, nothing provokes me more, Elizabeth, than people who talk about radical Islam. Islam is Islam. There is no such thing as the wrong Islam. They're all following the scripture of their ideology. It is a set way of life. They are where freedom is at large. That's why you find the epicenter of jihadists in Houston, Texas, in Plato, Texas, right? It's the same thing. They come here to our democracies to fester their ideology into and use democracy against us. The little democracy we have left, I wouldn't say that we're a democracy anymore, but that's also a completely full discussion. Sweden has a Sharia party that got into their municipality.
What?
Like,
Shut up.
No, I'm not joking. What are they called? They're called not Nuans.
Let me ask you a couple of questions. If you think of the name of the Sharia party, let me know. One thing that we have to continually say is we have to equate Sharia with jihad, because jihad is required by Sharia. Sharia is the law. There, many people will say weird things like you can interpret the Quran to say, it's a matter of interpretation. To those Muslims that I have interviewed, I say, hey, I love you, bro. We know that's never going to happen. So you can be this persecuted minority within Islam as the unique interpreter of kill them wherever you find them. the unbelievers, which are Christians and Jews primarily. Kill them wherever you find them. And we could go on and list more and more and more and more and more verses or ayahs, but it's not going to happen, because when mass immigration enters into another culture, the strong culture or the violent culture or the committed culture will win. And you can tell just from how you're describing Norway, which, by the way, if I come to visit, we have to, because I want to do that before y'all go to like London, where you're, or Sweden. I'm so glad I've been to France and Rome, because I want to be there before the Eiffel Tower is, destroyed.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. So, doesn't there need to be a private education campaign? Do in Norwegian, are the videos produced by like memory and, all the videos of the imams speaking of, we're here, we're going to take away your culture, we're going to impose Sharia on you as soon as we have a large enough minority. Norway will be a Sharia state. And by the way, Sharia is apartheid. It is the oldest that I know of. I'm not saying it is, but it is apartheid in law in the 7th century, 600s. That is what Sharia is. So if your fellow Norwegians knew about the Quran and all this, would they reject it?
Yes, I believe so. If they truly knew, but they reject the knowledge, and that is the problem, right? The Swedish Sharia party is called Nyans, which in English translates to nuance. They're very open about what they want. I think Norwegians would guess, to answer your question. Islamnet, however, I'm just trying to find which Islamnet. Let's see. They're one of the more extreme, like openly extreme Islamic movements in Norway. They've had a few of these preachers that you're talking about come over, talking about how to kill gay people, and how to beat your wife, and all of these things. It's one of the bigger.
What are you all doing to change this? Okay, when immigrants...
let me just say this before you get into that, because this will shock you. If you weren't shocked already.
I'm shocked every day, so...
We let this openly more extreme movement, Islamnet, buy a property from... that used to be a public police property with a shooting range to create a youth club. Islamnet now owns a huge underground shooting range in Oslo. In what universe do you allow for that to happen when you understand what Sharia is?
Sharia is the overthrow and destruction of any culture that does not conform to Sharia. All cultures in the entire world must submit themselves to Sharia, must be in submission and and humiliation to all Islams, not just all Muslims, not just Islam and an imam and a caliph, but actually to every Muslim on the street. So the 17-year-old Muslim is superior to the 60-year-old Einstein type, a great thinker, historian, diplomat, a prime minister. A 19-year-old would be superior to a priest, to anybody that's not Muslim. Yep. That's what Sharia demands.
Yes.
Well, in your law, when you have all these asylum seekers, etc., in 2015 it says there were 260. Oh no, that's your crime statistics. I'm sorry. That seems so low. No, I'm kidding. I was just looking at your population. I'm not sure if this is brand spanking new, but Norway says 5.7% Muslim, Sweden 8.1%, which is madness. No, this must be old, because isn't France closer to 10%?
So if you're looking for the correct number, it's going to be hard to find, because they hide numbers through hiding nationality behind national citizenship, and we give about between 25 and 40,000 out each year. Mm-hmm. And then you have immigrant first generation, and then you have second generation,
and then it's hidden, even though
and then have one parent or two parent born abroad. So they mix and tricks with these numbers. I would say Muslim population in Norway, I'm not sure the percentage, but it is quite high. Actually, they're building now, the Rebecca Mosque is building now a new mosque in Oslo city for the price, I think, 3 million euros. Muslim Cultural Center is what they're saying.
That's what they always call it. Here in America, they do too.
I think about epic cities, not anywhere near that scale, but the grandiose wording of it is pretty much the same. It's a jihad.
Sorry to interrupt. I want to just get a couple of questions in here on this. You have these asylum seekers, refugees. We all know that really that's all a fraud. It's a system of taking away sovereignty from every nation, because if the person who wants to come in is the one deciding that they're an asylee or a refugee, gets in and then has to be housed there or domiciled there based upon their story, whether y'all want him or not, you've just totally lost your sovereignty. But then once you've given them naturalized citizenship, in America, we do not have a mechanism, unless you lied in a very verifiable way on your application, to denaturalize somebody. Do you have denaturalization if you wanted to rid yourself of the population of asylees that are not naturalized, or of both? Would you be able to do that to recover your culture before it's destroyed?
As things are today, no, I don't think so. Can't think of anything, at least that in law or something that would be valid. But if you ask my opinion, I would say yes. Like, if you gave somebody citizenship, you can take it away, because we have dual citizenship. So you can pretty much strip anybody without stripping them of a citizenship. But that's a technicality, and that demands will, and it demands also to be sovereign, right? So not to be a part of the EU. The EU is constantly trying to find ways to hinder national sovereignty. It's been done with Giorgia Meloni and her, trying to get rid of these immigrants. We don't really call them asylum seekers anymore. They're immigrants. They are here to hunt our welfare system. It is evident that they are. They're also the so-called poorest group, but they send a lot of money home. We're talking millions every single year that are sent back to Somalia, to Afghanistan, to all these nations, and they get more than the average Norwegian. We have a pretty good welfare system, and it worked really well for many, many years until we started to get a bunch of immigrants in. that get everything paid. Immigrants have even been bought houses here by municipalities, and you have young people that might never enter the housing market due to the policies that have been made in the EU and in Norway. So it's not only, two-tier policing or justice system. We are being discriminated in our own nation by our own workers.
That Frenchman, is it?
I love him. I know who you're talking about.
Camus, he wrote, and I've got to sit down and read through. I was watching. You can see a really amazing interview of him on YouTube by a British everybody's young to me now, young man. He's probably 30, and it's really, really good. So he's French. His last name is Camus because I thought, wait a minute, I thought he was dead. Why is this philosopher Frenchman kid? But that's his name. Anyway, you're being replaced, and
yes.
that 2000 year 2000 report from the UN about migration and how much the third world could, as a benefactor, of course, help out the Western world by sending in populations so that our economies could thrive, given that we don't have replacement. And they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, the UN, suggesting this for us. And it's actually happening. And so they've done just a lovely job.
It is very much happening. And I keep saying this to everybody, saying, well, we need immigrants. No, we do not. What we need are new family policies. We need a system in this country where you don't have to leave your 1-year-old in kindergarten to other people being paid by the state to take care of your child because you have to go back to work and being taxed to death.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need that system anymore. We need to look to Hungary to have, good family policies. I mean, I could point out, so I'm pregnant at the moment. I'm going to have a child.
Congratulations.
And I'm like, thank you, in November. And when I tell people that I have 1 year maternity leave, they go like, what? Yeah, I have 1 year paid maternity leave. It's beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
But when that's over, that's over. They expect me to leave my child with strangers before they even start talking. And that's not a good family policy. When you look to Hungary and you look at the tax reduction per child, and after 3 children, you never tax again in your life. Now we're talking about family policies that makes you want to create a family.
But you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very much in favor of no taxes. You have 3 kids. They've got to make sure it's right, the way it's set up. You have 3 kids, that's it. And I also think that having a helper come into your home, I think in America, we should not tax. We should have a special class. You know how Trump said no tax on tips. I think we should have for, in the old days, in the 17 and 1800s, you weren't rich because you had a girl come in and help in the household. That wasn't from somebody rich because, it was hard work to wash clothes. My grandma had one of those ringers, that you put the clothes through. Having a helper, not taxing them, and then giving that tax-free basis for 3 or more children, but cultural, the love of country, the love of your culture, your language. You are sharing something like a much more expanded family, an extended family, and your whole culture is going to contribute to this raising of the child. And I don't mean Hillary Clinton's "it takes a village." No, I mean a real community that has unity of values and language and morality and history and tradition. Israel has the highest birth rate of all nations, if you include it to be considered like a Western nation. If you throw in Japan, Australia, and everything, because Western is more not about location, but it's about the culture. Israel is far greater than replacement value. Far greater.
Yeah.
And why? Because
they value their tradition.
And their country.
Their tradition in Judaism is the only reason Judaism still exists.
That's right.
So, and if we don't do the same thing, then we will be replaced. There is no doubt in that. And I mean, let's have more children. I hear that our
have
UN
five.
politicians, they
Have
say
five.
our previous prime minister, he was the leader of the sustainability goals. Okay, our current prime minister, he's the leader of the world's oceans or whatever the hell it is called.
You guys, they're such posers. Look at me, virtue. You each is a chief virtue signaling officer or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's all of them. And then they stand there and they say, well, we need immigration because we don't have enough children. If we don't have enough children, then do something about that. We want Norwegian culture to thrive. That's what we want. We want our rituals and our traditions and our heritage, which goes back thousands of years. We want that to survive. Why am I not entitled to value my culture? Why am I not entitled to value my history?
When you think about all the money, exactly with the money you're spending on Somalis, you could have 2 years staying at home, or you could have the second year where you're working whatever you do, doesn't matter. What I'm saying is you could have helpers. All that money that you were spending on housing and welfare for Muslims to come in and tell you we're going to impose Sharia. And we're going
to... we have something called barnetrygd. What is that? Like child welfare. Every person
social services is what they call it. Like
but it's given to everybody that has children. So it's not just it's forever. I will get it once I give birth. So that is thing that you get like extra money for having a child. It's equivalent to about $100 a month or something like that. Okay. And then you asked me about multiple wives, right? No, we have no such law in Norway, but we do know from hospitals that we have all these Somali women, and this is documented, by the way. All these Somali women having children, they're divorced, or they were married for Allah, but they're not anymore. Having children, it's like, okay, but you just had like two children with a husband previous, and now you're having a third, and you said back then you were divorced, so how come you're having sex again and making kids? Well, they can never answer that. But there's multiple women per man, basically. And all of these women, all of these children, they collect this check that I just told you about. And then there's, the social, what did you call it? Social
service. Well, I called it social service. I thought you meant the people that come and take kids away.
That we have like two
social
different
welfare.
Yeah, social welfare. We have so much that you can get. It is actually for many of these women, they make more money sitting at home than actually going out getting a job. That is how our system works. And yet we're getting told that, we need immigrants to survive.
It's bad enough when they're your people. And yeah, I don't mind saying my people. As an American, having somebody on welfare that is just gaming the system really bothers me a lot. And I think that it is so destructive to the culture that it also bothers me because I want what's best for everybody. We all know that this destroys the culture or the family and the next generation. But I'll tell you one thing that just gets me hotter than anything is to find welfare recipients cheating the system and the taxpayer that are illegal immigrants or even immigrants. If you come here, I do not believe you should have any assistance. When my family came, they were independent. They were poor. They were Irish. Nobody liked the Irish in America. I don't remember if they were, like for whatever reason, don't like the Irish. Irish need not apply. Get in a wagon train, go back to the Dakotas, live in a sod house, which is made out of grass, wood, 12 kids. Nobody helped my great-grandma and her 12 kids and her husband, these Irish, redheaded, and they all grew up and contributed to society, and nobody helped anybody. I think some of my aunts got teaching, and they were brilliant, teaching certificates when they were 9th, 10th grade. And they were teachers because they learned things then. Like college is the new high school and vice versa. So to have somebody come on welfare to your country.
That's why they come here. That's why they make it all the way up north to Norway, to Sweden, to Denmark.
Because why would a Somali want to live in your weather?
I don't know. I don't even want to live in my weather. Okay? You have no idea how happy I am once I go to a warm place. I have a friend in Dallas, and he thinks I'm crazy, right? Because I go to Texas in summer. It's like, what are you doing here in summer? It is so hot. Nobody can live here. Everybody leaves. We go to the mountains. We want to get out of here. I'm like, well, I enjoy it. I enjoy sitting out there in 94 degrees and the humidity and just like sweating. You know how happy that makes me?
Yeah,
it makes me
I can imagine. I can imagine.
When you're stuck here for 5 months in darkness. Yeah, darkness. It is cold and snowing and icing, and you feel like everything is dead and is never coming back to life. You enjoy those things, at least I do. So I'm thinking the same thing as you. Like, why on earth would you leave?
It's for money. It's for money.
Yeah.
It's for money. And jihad, because cultural demographic jihad, baby jihad, that's all really important too. So tell me what you're up to so we can close out. I also want to get your phone number. This has been so much fun. I'd like to know what you're working on. Obviously, you're a reporter. You concentrate on immigration, or that's one of your main concentrations. Tell us where to find you. Tell us, people how to support you, or where to go to read your stuff.
So you can find me on X on Mistereggen. That's my handle. I post more like short stuff there, but at least that's a place where you can see what I'm up to. I do post my international interviews out there when there is any. In terms of reading my stuff, I mostly write in Norwegian, and I do Norwegian television. So to even that out, I do the occasional international stuff. So like I said, following me on X is the best place to see what I'm up to. I do have a few interesting projects coming up. I think that what you said about cultural jihad and political jihad, and then, actual jihad, which we see happening in Africa now all the time, is very important. So I am diving into what Norway is spending on Boko Haram and all these jihadist groups.
Why are they surprised? Okay, we won't even go there. I'm going to have you back on to hear about why Norway is supporting Boko Haram.
Yeah, because we have a tendency to do that. We flew the Taliban to Norway on a private jet on taxpayer money to talk about women's rights. I am not joking.
Have you seen that video on X where they try to show Muslim men? I don't know if it's what country, because I get confused, right? It's It's no offense. I mean, I know a British accent. I'm clear on that. Germans are pretty, identifiable. Italians are always Italian. But you guys are a little bit harder. Anyway, and they're showing them and they're doing a dance to not rape women. And they're saying, they actually point to this region, and we're talking about a bunch of 65-year-old women that look like housekeepers, like from frumpy, and they're doing no, 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 and they're doing this in front of a bunch of migrants, and then showing them how. You haven't seen that?
Is that from Finland?
Maybe it's Finland. Yeah.
Wonder. I'm not sure. I think I've seen that. If it's the same thing, because they made like bracelets for Swedes, no consent bracelets. Anyway, there's a lot of weird stuff going on over here.
Rapists are always,
bizarre.
Wow, no consent. Yeah. Now that I've seen your pink bracelet, I won't go there.
So, I'm not going to rape you.
I'm not going to rape you. Thank you very much for being so kind in the way you turn me down. So you're working on how much money Norway is spending on funding jihadists.
On terrorism, basically, on I want to know how much money Norway spends on jihad through government funds, through USAID.
AID.
So NorAID, because we have the equivalent to that, actually.
Oh, good for you. Good for you.
Through the different organizations as Red Cross, Norwegian Refugee Council, which I know is heavily in Africa, what goes directly out of our foreign department. And, we spend so much money, and it's all hidden in we never know what is spent on.
No.
Even though they are obliged to show us, they yet still manage to hide the number. So that is one of the things I've started working on. I have more projects coming up that will mostly interest the international arena from Scandinavia. Like I said, I'm pregnant. I'm going into maternity leave later this year. Does not mean I will stop working, and I will put out more international stuff as that time is closing in, because I want people to know what's going on over here. So follow me on X is where you can find most of my work. And if you're very interested in what goes on in Scandinavia in particular, you can go to document.news. We do have an English site. It is not as updated as the Norwegian, Danish, or Swedish site, which you can always go into and then use ChatGPT or DeepL or Google Translate if you can stand Google Translate to translate. But there's a bunch of stuff going on here that would probably interest most people in terms of mass immigration, climate scam, and all those things that, makes the elites go around.
Right. And